Hi everyone, good evening to everyone. Hello and welcome to this week's YouTube Live. It is lovely to see you all today. Thank you so much for joining me. Can everybody hear me okay? Do let me know in the chat function if you're struggling to hear me at all. It's lovely to see you all here and I hope you've all had a lovely week so far. For those of you that have never joined us before, we are Cette. We are an online language school completely funded by CPF. We've also got a lovely Instagram page, so do check us out at Cette to find out what we're all about and to see if you're interested in having English courses with us. So we're starting a brand new series of 5 this week. So welcome to our first one of this new series called English Conversation. And in this series, we're going to be going through some of the most useful English conversations, scenarios in English, kicking off with airport conversation. And I know that for many of us, travel seems like a very distant memory. I can't remember the last time I went to an airport or even what an airport looks like these days. But let's stay hopeful that by the summer, we'll be able to travel again and you'll be able to use some of your amazing English skills and put them to the test. So today we're going to run through some key phrases and some vocabulary when traveling. In part 1, we're going to be looking at sort of the key places that we find in an airport, so you're able to navigate around an airport and not get too lost when you're traveling. We're going to be looking at some typical phrasal verbs, take off, check in, things like this to help you navigate the vocabulary that we use in the airport when we're traveling. And then in part 2, we're going to be looking at how to answer some of the questions we're asked at the airport. So by security or by flight attendants, by general staff at the airport, so you feel confident with general airport conversation. I'll be joined by my lovely assistant, Axel, who I'll just let you say hello to.
Hello guys, can you hear me? Can you see me this time?
I hope you can all see him. I can see him on my screen, so I hope you can see him too.
Yes.
Do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Axel, for people that don't know you?
Yes, of course. So, first of all, thank you very much, Lily, to accept me again in your YouTube Live. It's always an honor. And so I'm Axel. I'm the editor and the director of all the Sac des Langues video that you have been seen for quite a while now. So, for example, all the teaching videos that we have on 360 or some other videos that we post on the social media, for example, Instagram, Facebook. I'm the man behind it. And also, I have another colleague that works with me. It's Luca. Luca is not there at the moment, but he helps me a lot. And so we are the two people behind all the video with helping all the teachers, creating all the marvelous content that you consume to help you progress in English.
Thank you very much, Axel. We'll be coming back to you in a bit. So in this week's YouTube Live, as I said, we've got part 1 looking at vocabulary, part 2 looking at some key phrases and useful conversation in the airport, and part 3 we will be doing a quick recap of everything that you've learnt. So do listen in, listen carefully to what I'm saying because I will be testing you at the very end of this YouTube Live. So without further ado, let's dive straight into some content. So we're going to start off with looking at some of the key vocabulary when we think about the airport, perhaps some of the most useful places to know in English at the airport, suitable for beginners, this slide. So we'll start off very simple with the terminal. So on the left-hand side, upper hand corner, I've got a picture of a terminal. And a terminal is a building within an airport where passengers go to depart on a flight. So perhaps you've seen on your tickets before when you've travelled that you're going to Terminal 1 or Terminal 2, depending on the size of the airport. Some of them stretch up to Terminal 5 or 6. So the terminal is the building within the airport where you depart for a flight. We've then got number 2, the arrival lounge, and the photo on the very right-hand side top corner. The arrival lounge, or in short, arrivals. And this is the waiting room for flights that are landing. So if you are going to pick up, a nice phrasal verb there for you, pick up someone from the airport, you would wait in arrivals for them to arrive. Then the opposite of the arrival lounge, if you're lucky enough to be going on holiday, you'd be heading to the departure lounge, which is also known as departures in short. And basically this is the waiting room for flights that are going to take off. And that's another great phrasal verb for you. To take off is the action of a plane leaving the ground. You can also call that an outgoing flight. I'll write that in the chat for you, can see how it's spelled. An outgoing flight, or a flight that is going to take off. All of, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. And then lastly, number 4, can't count today, is the boarding gate. So this is the most important place at the airport, arguably. It's the place you go to board your flight. So it's the very last stop or moment in the airport before you get on your flight. This is where you show your passport to the flight attendant before getting on the actual flight itself. And all of these terms are really key airport vocabulary. For an example, you might hear an announcement like this over a tannoy. A tannoy is the sort of loudspeaker megaphone that you hear in an airport or perhaps a supermarket. You might hear something like the following. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Flight 367 departing to New York has been delayed by approximately 2 hours and will now be departing from gate 13. We apologise for any inconvenience caused. You might hear this last phrase quite a bit at the airport. We apologise for any inconvenience caused is a very formal and polite way of apologising for a delay or something going wrong with your travel. You might see it in sort of business letters as well, in sort of general formal English use, but it's most certainly used at the airport as well if your flight is delayed or indeed, unfortunately, cancelled. Okay, so let's dive into some phrasal verbs to do with travel. I'll write that in the chat for you. So phrasal verbs. The English language in general is packed full of phrasal verbs. We cannot get enough of them. And by phrasal verbs, I mean a phrase which is made up of a verb and another element. This is often an adverb or a preposition, and we basically put these two elements together to make a whole new phrase, a phrasal verb. There's lots and lots of phrasal verbs to do with travel, and what we'll do is we'll dive into some of them now. Do let me know in the chat if you know any others that aren't referenced here, and we'll have a look at those as well. So, kicking off with set off, this means to start a journey. So you might say, we set off for London this morning, meaning that you started your journey to London this morning. Set off. Then we've got check-in. You might check in at an airport, or you might check in at an hotel. For example, you might hear someone announce, please check in before going to security. Check-in is the moment where you drop off your bags, you show your passport, you show your ticket, right at the very beginning of when entering the airport before going through security. Then we've got drop off, to drop off. So this is to take someone to a place and leave them there. So for example, a taxi might drop someone off. The taxi dropped us off at the airport this morning, which basically means the taxi picked me up at my house, it then drove me to the airport, and the taxi driver left me there to drop off. You can use that in lots of different senses as well. You could drop off the kids at school, you could drop off a friend at the cinema. It's not only for airport and travel vocabulary in this case. We've then got get off. And this means to leave a vehicle. So, for example, a bus or a train or a plane. It tends to be used for public transport or big transport. So, for example, you wouldn't say get off a car because a car is sort of a private and smaller vehicle. You wouldn't say get off a taxi either. It's this idea of a bus, a train, or a plane. So I got off the bus, I will get off the plane, I got off the train. The opposite of that is get on. So to enter a bus, a plane, or a train, similar rules apply in the sense that it's this idea of public transport or big vehicles such as a plane, train, bus. For example, I got on the plane for Dubai this morning. We've then got see off, and this means to go to the airport to say goodbye to someone. So, for example, we could say, my mum saw me off at the airport this morning, which means my mum took me to the airport, she waved goodbye, and then I went and got my flight. It's a really useful phrasal verb that, again, we uniquely use in sort of travel purposes, this idea of seeing somebody off. We've then got take off. So we touched on this a little bit earlier. Take off is the moment that a plane departs. So it's that moment when the plane leaves the ground. For example, we could say, the plane took off fast. I was very scared. And then lastly, we've got the opposite of take off, which is called touchdown. Touchdown can be used in travel for planes. It can also be used in space travel. So you might say a rocket has touched down on the moon, but you could also use it to do with being on a plane. For example, our flight touches down before midday, which means your flight is going to land before midday. In the next part of this YouTube Live, we're going to look at a little video together. We're going to see a man checking in for his flight, and then we'll follow up on some of the key phrases and vocabulary that he uses when talking.
Good morning, sir. Can I see your ticket and passport?
Certainly. There you are.
Thank you. Okay, and how many suitcases will you be checking in?
Just one suitcase.
And did you pack your bags yourself?
Yes, I did.
Okay, do you have any electrical goods?
I have an electric shaver in my hand luggage. Is that okay?
That's fine. So nothing in your suitcase?
No.
Okay. Would you like a window or aisle seat?
A window seat, please.
Okay. In just one moment. And this is your seat number and the departure gate. You can go straight through to the departure lounge. Enjoy your flight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excellent, great. So that was an example of a typical airport check-in scenario. I hope you all managed to understand the English. I felt like it wasn't too fast, but do write in the chat if you were confused by any sections of the video. I would be happy to help you. So let's explore the video in a little more detail together. The types of questions the man was asked by the receptionist. So she asked him, how many suitcases will you be checking in? So she's using the future simple here to ask how many bags he would like to drop off before his flight. This is the moment we give our bag to the receptionist, and from that point on, we've only got our hand luggage with us. And by hand luggage, I mean potentially your small handbag, a small rucksack, the small bag that you take onto a flight with you that doesn't need to be checked in. I'll write that in the chat for you as well. Hand luggage. That is the bag that we can carry on to a flight. The woman also asked if the man packed his bags himself. Did you pack your bags yourself? And of course, this isn't because she wants to know if he's capable of packing a bag. I'm sure she's not particularly interested in that. This is a typical security question to be sure that it was packed yourself and by not someone dangerous. So if something goes wrong with the bag later, this person has already declared that they packed everything in their bag themselves. So say if there was something alarming in the bag, the receptionist would be able to report that the man did say he originally packed the bag himself. It's just a general security question that you might be asked if you're traveling somewhere far, potentially the US, somewhere to China, for example. She also asked if the man had any electrical goods. Electrical goods is a term which refers to anything which you plug into a plug socket that needs electricity in order to function. For example, a laptop is an electrical good, and often airlines will ask whether we have particular items in our bags, such as electrical goods. They might also ask if we've packed flammables or firearms. And these two terms are typical security questions as well. A flammable is something that can catch fire quickly. So on a flight, of course, you don't want to have packed anything particularly flammable in case there was a fire. A firearm is something such as a gun. You obviously cannot pack a gun or any form of weapon on a flight, so a firearm is a form of gun. And lastly, she asked him, would you like to have a window or an aisle seat? Quite self-explanatory here. A window seat is the seat on the plane which is next to the window, and the aisle seat is closest to the corridor, and this corridor is called an aisle. You also, if you go to the supermarket, this is the row that we call as well in the supermarket, so a supermarket aisle, and this is indeed the term we use for a plane as well, the aisle in a plane. Some other questions you might, typical airport questions at check-in, you might be asked, where are you flying to today? And as much as I'm sure the receptionist would like to know where you're going, this is to check that you're completely aware where you are going and that it matches your boarding pass. Your boarding pass is your ticket. It's a formal word for a ticket. So she's basically asking, what's your destination? They might ask you, have you checked in online? Which is basically another way of saying, have you already had your ticket processed online? In a modern world, often we do check in online before arriving to the airport, so it's often a common question. If we've already checked in online, our boarding pass has already been checked. And then lastly, you might be asked to show your passport. So can I see your passport, please? And it's basically asking here for a form of identity. If you're traveling to the UK or the US, an identity card is not enough, of course. You need to show a valid passport. I know in France, if you travel from France to Italy, for example, you can just show your ID. However, this is not enough for countries such as the UK, the US, or other Anglophone countries, Australia and Canada too. Okay, excellent. Now we've looked at some typical questions at check-in. Let's explore some common questions that you might see or hear, upon arrival. I have a quick question for you all. Does anyone know the name of the place where you get your passport checked upon arriving? There's multiple answers to this. Does anyone know the name of the place you get your passport checked upon arrival? Again, there are multiple answers to this question. What I'll do is I'll go through our phrases and then I'll check back at your answers afterwards. So, when we arrive at a place, we might be asked, what is the purpose of your trip? And this is basically another way of saying, why are you visiting the country? Why are you here? What are you doing here? We've then got, what is the purpose of your visit? Business or pleasure? And this is a synonym of the phrase above. Business means that you are traveling and it's linked to work. And pleasure is a vacation, a holiday, if you're visiting family. So what is the purpose of your visit? Business or pleasure? We've then got, how long do you intend to stay? This is the length of time you think you will be in the country, and the likelihood is, if you're travelling to the UK anytime soon, you will be asked this question because we have now left the EU. This also goes for countries such as the US, Australia, where you do need a visa in order to travel for more than a certain amount of days. How long do you intend to stay? A classic question to see that you're going to be there within the limited time frame that you're allowed. So, for example, in the UK, it's 90 days before you have to return back to France. You might be asked to see your return ticket. A return ticket is your ticket back to where you came from. So your ticket out is your ticket to go to a place, and your return ticket is the ticket in order to go back to where you came from. And then lastly, you might be told to head over to baggage claim. And baggage claim is the area of the airport where arriving passengers will pick up their suitcases. Right, let's have a look at your answers. Was anyone able to answer, does anyone know the name of the place you get your passport checked upon arriving? Theza has says customs. That is absolutely a correct answer. You can go to customs. Felix says border. He has missed the end of that phrase though. It's border control. Very close though. You've got half of it there. So you've got customs. It can be called border control. Christopher says customs and checking desk. Checking desk isn't the most formal way to say it. However, customs is indeed correct. Boarding room and security room from Catherine. Maxime has said customs. And Chriselle said check-in desk. Remember, we've already arrived at this point, so we're not checking in. We're actually trying to leave the airport. So this is a slightly different part of our travel. This is what it can be called. We've got 3 possible answers: border control, passport control, and customs. Apologies for the caps lock there. Border control, passport control, and customs. Okay, right. Now we're going to invite Axel back to our YouTube live. I'm going to be doing a role play with Axel, and we're going to be running through some typical scenarios that you find at the airport. I'm going to be playing the role of a receptionist, and Axel is going to be playing the role of our lovely traveller. So Axel has come back now. So we've got 3 lovely role plays for you. And then at the end of each role play, we'll go through some of the key phrases and vocabulary that we went through. Axel, are you ready to become the star actor you were always meant to be?
No. I will try my best though.
Okay.
I'll try to reach your level.
Okay, excellent. Let's go. Okay. Good afternoon, sir. Where are you flying to today?
London.
That's great. May I see your passport, please?
Sure. Here you go.
Are you checking in any bags today, sir?
Just 1 bag, please.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
I have a stopover in Amsterdam. Do I need to pick up my luggage here?
No, it will be forwarded straight to London.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excellent, great. So here I asked Axel for his passport and his bags. And Axel asked me if the bags would arrive in London or whether he had to pick them up in Amsterdam. And the word we used here was a stopover. Perhaps you've heard this word before, a stopover. This is another great phrasal verb, and it basically means that you're changing flight at another destination. So Axel was going to Amsterdam before he was going to London. Okay, on to scenario 2, Axel. Are you ready?
Was I good? A good actor? Yes.
We'll let the audience judge. Please do leave your judgments on Axel in the chat function. Okay, excellent. So now we're going to go through a scenario of having an overweight bag. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this when you get to the airport and your bag is too heavy. Okay, so I'm very sorry, sir, but your bag appears to be overweight. The maximum weight is 20 kilograms for this flight. You either need to remove some of the items in your suitcase or pay for the excess.
How much is the excess?
It's £10 for every extra kilo.
Okay, in that case, I will pay the excess.
Excellent. Okay, so in this scenario, Axel's bag was too heavy. So I asked him to either take some items out of the bag or pay for the excess. Perhaps you've heard this word before. Excess means the extra weight of his suitcase. So if you pay the excess, you're paying for every extra kilo over the maximum weight that your bag weighed. Okay, and last scenario for Axel's Oscar-winning performance is we're going to be going through a delayed flight. So I'm sure many of you have been through this before. When you get to the airport, you're ready to go, but unfortunately your flight is delayed, which means it's not on time.
It's the worst. I hate it.
The absolute worst, I agree. Okay, let's go for Axel. I'm sorry, sir, but your flight to Paris has been delayed.
Oh, that is frustrating. Do you know when the flight will depart?
It's expected to depart at about 3 p.m, but please do check the departure boards for updated boarding times and flight information.
Okay, thank you for your help.
Excellent. So, in this last scenario, I told Axel that his flight would not be leaving at the expected time. It was delayed. So I advised him to keep an eye on the big boards that we find at the airport, which detail all the information you have about the flight. And this is called a departure board or a flight board. So the big boards that you find in the airport are called a departure board or sort of a flight board or a flight timetable, and that's where you find out all the information about your flight. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me, Axel. I'm sure everybody thought you were a 5-star actor.
Thank you very much, Lily. It was a pleasure, and thank you very much, guys. I see you all very soon.
Thank you, Axel.
Bye. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Okay, great. So on to last bit of our YouTube live together is part 3. We're going to do a recap. So I'm going to check that you've been listening to what we've gone through today, and I hope that you've all managed to learn something as well. So let's try and put that knowledge to the test. Part 3, our recap. So we're going to start off with a little pop quiz together. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and then do write in the chat function if you know the answers to these questions at all. Number 1. What is the name of the place we wait to board a flight? Does anyone know the name of the place we wait to board a flight? So when we go to the airport, where do we wait? Excellent, we've got some good answers. Christopher said departures. Remember, there's an E between the R and the S of departures. Swazika says departure lounge. Yes. Evelyn, it's more the departure lounge. The arrivals is if you are waiting for someone to collect them from the airport. So you haven't taken the flight, you've gone to collect them. Catherine has said the boarding room. Not exactly. A better term would be departures or a waiting room. Christopher's also said the terminal, and the terminal is the sort of big area in which you board the flight rather than the specific area that I'm looking for. So the answer to this, well done for those of you that got it right, is departure lounge / departures. You could also call it a waiting room if you were to be less specific, but the best terminology to use is the departure lounge in full, or simply just departures. Question 2. Where do you go to drop off your bags at the airport? Does anyone know where you go to drop off your bags? Here we've got a fantastic phrasal verb, drop off. Anybody know where we go to drop off bags at the airport? If you've got a heavy suitcase that you can't take onto the flight, where do you go? Got some good answers from Christelle. Swazik at the check-in desk. Yes, very formal indeed. The check-in desk. Check-in. Baggage claim, Catherine, is more the place where we pick up our luggage once we've had our flight. So if I was flying to Amsterdam and I arrived in Amsterdam, I would go to baggage claim to pick up my my bags at the end of the flight. The term I'm looking for is check-in. So well done for those of you that got that at home, a check-in or indeed a check-in desk. And lastly, for this part of the pop quiz, where can you check your flight time? Does anyone remember our little conversation with Axel? Where can you check your flight time? Where did I tell him to keep his eyes on? Not to worry, Catherine, if you've twisted your words a little bit, airport vocabulary can indeed be a bit complicated. Where can you check your flight time? Christelle's straight in there with flight board. Anybody else got any ideas? Do we agree with Christelle? Christopher said the departures board. Marie says flying board. Flying board is not the exact term that I would use. It does make sense, however, it's not the most correct use of English. We've got a full mix of answers here from everybody. So it's the departure board or the flight timetable, or indeed, as Christelle said, the flight board as well works as perfectly acceptable. Okay, and lastly on this week's YouTube Live, let's complete the phrasal verb together. So I'm going to do the beginning of a phrasal verb, and I'd like you in the chat to do the end of it. To drop. Anybody know what the end of this phrasal verb is? Swazik is straight in there, Valerian as well, Catherine, Christophe, Christelle, Evelyn, oh, you're all fantastic, well done you. Yes, to drop off. So to drop off, for those of you that have forgotten or might not remember, is to take someone to a place and leave them there. For example, the taxi drops us off at the airport. Okay, here we've got two possible answers. Get. Does anyone know? Christophe has gone for one of them, get on. And Swazik has said the other, get off, yes. Absolutely everyone, well done. Get on or get off, and this means to get on or off a mode of public transport, to enter or to exit. Get on means to enter, get off means to exit. And remember what I said, this phrasal verb is used for buses, for planes, for trains, for metros, anything to do with sort of public transport. And then lastly, to take. Does anyone know the end of this phrasal verb? And I hope we can all do this very soon. Absolutely, we've got wonderful answers from everybody who answered. To take off. Yes, absolutely, to take off the moment when the plane leaves the ground. Okay, so that leaves me to the very end of our YouTube Live together this evening. Thank you so much for joining me, and indeed my special guest Axel. I'm sure he had a lovely time talking to you all as well, and he got to practice his acting skills. It was so nice to chat to you all, and we're here every week doing a free YouTube Live. If you've got friends or family who want to learn English, do spread the word, send it to them as well. Remember to like and subscribe as well, so you can see regular updates on our YouTube channel. And do have a look at our Instagram page as well. You can find us by typing in Sucked Along into the Instagram search bar. Thank you so much again, everyone, for coming, and I'll see you next week. Thanks. Goodbye.